#1 bestseller, guys. That's what's up. I just wanted to give a big thank you to all the people that have supported me in this book, in this journey. Look, I wrote this book specifically for parents because I see so many people and parents and family members just struggling, trying to answer that question, what do I do when you have someone that is in addiction? And there's a lot of these like terminology things, like we use the word enabling and codependent and all that stuff. And we do have a lot of like negative connotations right now with some of those words. And that is what ends up happening a lot of times when we have certain terminology to describe what's happening with us. But at the end of the day, what's really important is that we understand and we get all the facts that we can, and we have a good understanding of how to approach situations, especially with something like addiction, because addiction really runs under its own set of rules. It has its own language. And when we don't really understand what the rules are and the language is, then it's really hard to help the person that's in there, right? So there's a lot of like lying and manipulation, and there's a lot of shame. And I'll give you one of the bigger tips that really helps in the overall sense when you do have a loved one in addiction. And this is one of those rules that we use in kind of what I'll call the normal society, and the normal way of thinking, and the normal logical sense of our world that we're in. We have a tendency to use shame to try to get people to do what we want. And I don't mean shame in a negative way. What I mean is, for example, when we're growing up in school, we have a grading system to define how well someone does in school. And when someone gets an F, we're like, man, you should really do better. You should get an A. You should work harder. You should do, what you have to get better grades. And that's what I mean. Like, shame has a negative connotation, and I don't mean shame in a negative connotation in this way. So there's a difference between being kind of using shame as a way to get people to rise up and do better. And then there's ashamed, which is very different. So when someone, shames me, or a parent says, I do something wrong. My mom says, man, I'm really disappointed in you. Oh, that hurts. It makes me want to do better. Okay? And a lot of times I do. And that's the point, is a lot of times we do have a tendency as a society to use shame to make people reach their fullest potential. And it's not a bad thing. When you're a little kid and you're playing in the yard and the ball goes out into the street and the kid starts running after it, parent catches them at the last minute, trying to keep them from going out into the street before looking both ways. What do? Well, we scare them a little bit and say, you can't do that. Basically, we're using shame to get in their brain to make them wake up and realize that that's not a smart decision. They could have killed themselves. There's nothing wrong with that, right? As we grow up, when it comes to addiction, that same rule of using shame as a form of, I'm so disappointed in you, how dare you do these things, what's another one? I can't believe you stole from me. All of that stuff. And you, as a parent, when your child does something, when they're in their addiction, you have every right to be angry. If I really felt like shame was the answer, I would say you should just shame them until they understand what they're doing to themselves and they want to get help. But when it comes to the world of addiction, shame no longer works. You can't shame them into not crossing the street. You can't shame them into better grades. It's actually really all about how you approach people who are a little bit less logical, and part of what they're going through is a lack of confidence. Part of what they're going through is a lack of believing in themselves. So they already are ashamed of themselves, and the more that the society and the parents and the friends and the families put shame on them, then the more ashamed they get, and the less likely they're going to be willing to do what they need to do to get better. And that's one of the big strategies that is different than you would think in our world, in our normal society, because I went through my own series of addictions, and that's a lot of what happened to me. Is I felt very ashamed, and I felt not good enough. I felt like I didn't belong. I felt like I couldn't do anything right. And I really did lack that confidence in myself until, my mom started coming in, and she started changing our dynamics a little bit to make me really kind of step up and own my life and own, who my responsibilities for who I wanted to be as a person. And I didn't want to be that person. And I don't think that there's very many addicts I've ever talked to that said that they wanted to be the person that they are when they're in their addiction. They know that they're not the people that they want to be. And they are lacking the confidence to ever do anything about it. And so that's the biggest strategy we can give them, is a lot of love, a lot of support, a lot of confidence, but not in such a way where we're handing them everything and making it easier on them to continue doing the things that they're doing. Because as long as someone is coming in and taking away all their problems, in their mind, they still feel like they can't ever do it on their own. And they have to believe that they can do these things. They have to believe in themselves enough, and they have to know that they have the support around them to go through the hell they're getting ready to face. What I'll say about that and the support of the family, of the system that they're in, is, like I said, you have every right to be angry at some of the things that they have done to you, or some of the things that they are doing in their life. And that's where a little bit of the loving detachment and stopping yourself from being sucked into their world will do you a huge favor. And to work on your own guilt and being ashamed of your child and the way they're behaving, that's going to be your own work. And that's not something for them to help you with. You have your own journey, your own work. If you have any sort of emotional ties into your loved one, and if you're a parent and you have a child going through this, unfortunately, your emotional well-being, your mental well-being, your spiritual well-being gets impacted, and it gets affected. And that's where some of these strategies also apply to you. I get asked a lot, if my child is the one that has the problem, why do I need to change? And it's because your emotional well-being, your feelings, your anger, your frustration, your guilt, your feelings of being shamed, your feelings of feeling like somehow you caused this, even if you don't feel like somehow you caused this, the anger, it all impacts the decisions around the situation that you're in. It just does. It's perfectly human to have emotions when someone that we love is destroying their lives. It's reacting from those emotions that starts getting us blurred in some of the decisions that we're making. And that's why, I call my book, it's called Dear Parents, Strategies to Help Your Loved One Through Addiction. Because it's really all about how you handle yourself with them so that they can start hearing you. You can start changing some of those dynamics to not only separate yourself, but also for them to start gaining the confidence and the belief in themselves that they can do this, because that's what they need. They need love. They need support, but that doesn't mean necessarily that we're just handing everything to them. And this is what I say a lot, we want to invest in their future. So when you do things, you have to sit back and ask yourself, am I investing into their future? Or am I just spending money that they're just throwing away? Like if you're sending them to rehabs before they're ready, are you just spending thousands and thousands of dollars? Are you just giving them money? And that's some of the financial confusions. And I go all into this in a lot more detail in my book. And I'm very excited about this book. I'm very excited that it did get on the #1 bestseller list. Again, I wanted to thank you for that. And I just wanted to kind of give you a brief flyover of some of the stuff that's in here. And why I wrote it down is because I just see so many people struggle. So I use a lot of my experience. I use a lot of my mom's experience and what really helped us get through my own addiction. Actually, as a matter of fact, she wrote my foreword in here. And she did a great job, and I'm proud of her for doing what she had to do in my addiction and doing that separation and giving me that confidence and giving me that love that I did need. And she didn't know it at the time that that's what was happening. She just started helping herself, and by her helping herself actually ended up helping me. And that's kind of the message that I wanted to put into this world. So I wrote it down. You can get this on Amazon. You can also get this I'm doing this for like just a limited time. You can actually go to my website, ManeelyConsulting.com, and sign up and get your free version of this. And there's some cool things that happen when you do that. I explain a lot more about, there's some typos in here. It happened. I actually knew going into it that there was typos. So there's typos. And when you sign up for the free version, I actually end up in an email explaining about the typos and why I chose to leave them in there. And there was a very specific reason as to why I did that. And when you sign up, that's what you get. You get the reason of why I actually left those typos. Eventually, what I'm going to do is do an afterword about the typos. But for now, you just go to my website, ManeelyConsulting.com. You can get your free version. If you don't want to do that and you still like the printed copies better, you can go to Amazon and get it. And it's a very quick read. I did that on purpose. I've had people tell me that they just sat down and read the whole thing. I designed it that way. I also designed it in such a way that if you're really busy and you don't like just sit down for 2 hours or an hour and a half and read books, all of the chapters are really short so that you could actually put it down a lot and pick it back up and put it down and pick it back up very easily. So I hope you guys enjoy. I hope this was helpful just to kind of explain a little bit about some of the strategies that are in here that's going to help you if you have a loved one in addiction. And if you have a family member, a lot of the same concepts, and you're not necessarily a parent, a lot of the same concepts still apply. The reason I chose to focus on the parents, though, is because 1, you will always be their parent. 2, there's a complicated dynamic when it comes to the parent-child relationship. You can't deny that that's true. It's true. And so I wanted to focus on those dynamics because it's generally speaking, the parents are the ones that end up, unfortunately, being kind of the caretakers. And so I wanted to speak, a little bit to how you be a caretaker for someone that is in addiction. If you have a husband or a wife in addiction, a lot of the same concepts will apply. But I do speak specifically to the parents in here, because you will always be their parent. That you can't change that. And good luck on your journey. You'll also see in here, and I know I'm making this video a little bit longer than I had intended, but that's just what happens. And you will actually see in here, and one of the things that I think is really important is that, okay, you read a book, but now what? So you have a lot of this really good information, but how do you start integrating and applying some of the things that you learned on an ongoing basis? Because a lot of times what happens is we read a great book, we get inspired, we think we're going to go change our lives, and then we get sucked right back into our old patterns, our old ways of thinking, and nothing changes. And if nothing changes, then nothing changes. So, you know, part of what I've included in here is I really want to help you make changes. And changes can sometimes take a long time, and it will always include, and if you think about this, I know people give me a hard time when I say, or in general, anybody says, always, ever, and all of those definitive kind of words. But I am going to say that the majority of the time, when real change happens, it's because you're starting to break patterns, you're starting to break behaviors, and that can often take a third party in some way, shape, or form to help break those patterns, because your patterns are ingrained in you, and it's hard to see them. So generally speaking, it takes third parties to really make change happen. Whether it's a preacher, whether it's a therapist, whether it's a 12-step program, whether it's a sponsor, whether it's a psychologist, it's a medication, it's a whatever it is, there's usually an outside thing that helps us see our patterns, break our patterns, and work on them, and rewire and change some of that stuff. So think about that. Is if you really want your situation to change, it's probably going to take a third party, because that's just how it works. And I do have an offer in here for you guys for one, it's a free phone call with me, and I have a ton of resources in terms of, not only do I have my own services that I use to help people, but if maybe I'm not the right fit for you, I have a lot of resources at my disposal to help, because my purpose, my passion is to help the outside people that have other loved ones in addiction. That's all I care about. All I care about is getting the message and helping people figure out what to do about this epidemic that we're in right now, with so many people dying. I have my own friends that have passed away from overdoses. It was a big reason why I started doing the things that I'm doing now, is because I just felt like I needed to do something. Like I needed to help and try to do what I could do to support people that are going through this and do have loved ones in addiction. So again, if you want to check my website out, it's maniliconsulting.com, and I'll be looking forward to hearing from you, and especially what you guys think about the book. If you read it, you love it, you like it, you can go leave me a review on Amazon. That would be amazing. So I will, sorry this was a little longer than I had intended, but that's sometimes just what happens. So anyway, have a good day. Looking forward to hear from you. Just hit me up and let me know. You can just go to my website and you can find out all my contact information. Have a good day. Bye.